Well, good evening. I'm Alan Jackson, and welcome back to Nashville. We have good news to report tonight. America has a border again. No country in the world can survive without one, and for the past several years, the only thing we had that resembled a border was a few lines on the map. Well, after less than 2 months, some of the very worst criminals and violent gangs in the country have been pulled out of hiding, arrested, and sent to jail, to Gitmo, or back to where they came from. In addition, the steady stream of newcomers has turned back around and headed home. Mind you, it's taken everything President Trump could put together in short order. Border czar Tom Homan working 24/7, Secretary Kristi Noem traveling the country to show her support for the immigration authorities and our local police, and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, sending troops to help out in some of the toughest places to guard. But it's working. Though it's going to take years to get things back to where they were before the last administration let the world come in nonstop. Well, few people in the country have had to deal with this enormous and dangerous mess more so than the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick. He's joining us tonight. Welcome back, sir.
Good to see you. Good to be with you.
Let's begin by getting your inside view of how things have changed since the new team has taken over.
So, Alan, let's think back last fall when the president was asked, as he was leaving the White House to get on the helicopter, about the border. He said, "Oh, I need more money. I need Congress. I need this. I need that." He didn't need anything. It was just all a big lie. The border could have been secured anytime they wanted it to secure it. They did not want to secure it. And that's why a minimum of 12 million people came into this country during his time. The reason I say a minimum, Alan, is you used to hear those numbers, apprehensions, and that's exactly what they were, the number of people each day that were apprehended on the bridges and some in between the bridges where they could come over and ask for asylum. So if they caught 12 million, I can assure you were not caught. They apprehended and let them come into the country under Biden. That meant millions more were coming in. The border between Mexico and Texas, to put it in perspective, is 1,234 miles. That's longer than the distance from Atlanta, Georgia to Portland, Maine. Now, ours is kind of zigzaggy, but that's how much territory we had to cover. And so probably 15 to 18 million actually came in under Biden. It would be a good guess. So now, instead of 8 or 9 or 10,000 a day, it's less than 300 or 400 a day.
Wow.
And all that happened is we said, you can't come in. And we're shutting down the border. And you're not coming in. And it came from on high, not from God, but it came from on high in America, from the White House. And then Texas backed it up, as we've been doing this whole time, Alan. So people in South America, Central America, and Mexico who were walking miles and miles and months or 2 months to get here, they said, I'm not walking to Texas because they just said we can't come in. And from around the world, because we had people coming in here from all over the world. And they said, I'm not giving put everything I can scramble together and give to somebody to fly me to Mexico and then give it to a cartel agent and then get there and say I can't come in. All Biden had to do was say the border's closed, you're not welcome. Instead, he said the border's open and you are welcome. So literally, we're seeing hundreds a day crossing the border, the lowest ever, where we saw thousands and thousands pass.
Is it an overstatement to say that the behavior of the previous administration and their attitude was treasonous?
I wouldn't use the word treason. And the reason I wouldn't use it, because I looked it up once to see if it was. So I wanted to be sure. I would say they sold out the country. I would say that they did everything, Alan, they could do to give the cartels the keys to the back door of the country, coming in through the back door. They did everything they could to give the keys to Canada to let them come in from the north and give the keys to China to really kind of undermine our country. Look, you have to understand, Alan, this country is, now, I mean, you have to understand, I want the public to really get their arms around this because I know you know. We're in a battle here. It's darkness and light. It's not about Democrats and Republicans anymore. It's about, I would say, half the country that believes in God, half the country that doesn't. And those who don't believe in God, they don't believe in America. And so they want to undermine the country. And that's what the leftist socialists, no exaggeration here, in the Biden administration were doing behind the scenes, because we all now know what we all knew, but no one would admit it before. He wasn't running the country. It was people from the Obama team, many others, but the most far left socialist so-called Democrats were running this country, and they hate this country, and they were doing everything they could to bring us down, and an open border was one of those things.
Well, unlike the previous administration, the new vice president, he made a trip to the border soon after taking office. Listen to what he noticed.
I will say that the most heartening message that I take away from my visit here at the Texas border is the number of Border Patrol agents who have come up to me and said thank you, or said because of this, we've cut the number of border crossings from 1,500 a day to 30 a day. Or the people who have come up and said we've seen a reduction in 85% of the number of people who are dying at the American southern border.
You know, I realize it's going to take a while to turn things around, but how are the families and businesses in Texas doing?
Well, we're doing well. We always do well, despite whatever challenges we have. Texas is strong, eighth largest economy in the world. Our budget this year is about $332 billion. That's a 2-year budget because we passed 2-year budgets here. 1,000 people a day are still moving here. We are the greatest place to be, and there are many great places in America to live. So we're the greatest place to be if you're an entrepreneur, if you want to dream, and if you want to come and work hard. So it didn't slow us down, but obviously it overcrowded our emergency rooms for healthcare. It overcrowded our schools with students who were, you got to remember this, if you come from some of these countries, you might be 3 or 4 grade levels behind. So you can't put a 15-year-old in the 5th grade. And so very often what would happen, these kids would come in there to an age-appropriate grade. They were so far behind, they would drop out. And then what did they do? They might go into a life of crime or just be on the government's dollar to support them. So that's been a real issue for us. And crime is up everywhere. The cartels, vicious, dangerous gangs are here. And President Trump he's cleaning it out. It's going to take a while because a lot are here. That's, I would say, the biggest issue of all was criminals across the border, the gang members, and the drugs, fentanyl coming in, killing young Americans, number one cause of death for young Americans. And I would say the impact on the healthcare system.
Well, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, if you'll stay with us for another segment, we're just going to take a short break and encourage our viewers to send their thoughts in now on the border or anything else. You can send them to comments at alanjacksonnow.com. We'll be right back. We're back now with the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick. Can you tell us what you know about all the missing children? You know, there are all sorts of different numbers on how many were smuggled in, whether they were sold into the sex trade or cheap labor to countries of our corner. Is there just much that can be done to identify how many there are, how we find them, or how we help them?
Well, you never know what you don't know, Alan, in terms of the numbers when no one was keeping track. If you did a percentage of those millions that were apprehended, and remember, these children, a lot of them came to the country that were smuggled because we didn't see them, we didn't know about them, but many of them came in with adults who claimed they were related to them. And when President Trump was president before and now, they really watched Border Patrol understood how is this young person, this adult reacting? We don't have identification on these people, so we don't know. And we know that a lot of them were smugglers bringing children in for sex trafficking and for a slave working market. And Alan, just the numbers of those who crossed, it would be in the hundreds of thousands. I often said during the last session, and you asked me about the word treason, which I didn't go that far, but I will tell you this, there are young girls and boys being raped right this minute as we're talking in America somewhere. There are children that are in a sweatshop somewhere enslaved. And this is on the hands of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats. The idea that we now have a sex trade in America because they turned their back and allowed it to happen, because Alan, they knew what was happening. Their Border Patrol agents sent it up to command, and command didn't tell them. Or command hid it from them because they didn't want to lose their jobs. They knew what was going on. And the idea, the Bible talks about, you might as well have a millstone around your neck, how you impact children. Let me tell you what, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all those Democrats who support this policy and what's happening to these children, they've got a lot of millstones around their neck, and there'll be a reckoning for them at some point because of that. To find them, yes, a lot will be found. It will take time, but they will be damaged for life. Damaged for life. So, as we go about our life in this wonderful country that we live in every day, remember there's a child somewhere that needs to be rescued. So be on your alert. Keep your antenna up, and if you think some child could be in danger, there's something suspicious going on, let law enforcement know.
You know, another component of the open border, the new Homeland Security Secretary is trying to go deeper into stopping the drug trade by partnership with the Mexican government on the criminals, but not just in the U.S., but in Mexico too. Listen to her argument.
Yes.
And I think that progress can be built on. These partnerships that we have in going after traffickers, cartels, the drug trade, and also human trafficking can be even stronger and built on in the future. That's one of the things we've been asking for, in specific to the Mexican government, is how can we work better together to make sure we not only have the enforcement mission at the border, but south of the border, and make sure we're going after these cartels.
It makes sense. Do you think the Mexican government will work with her?
You know, when I know in the first term, when the president said, I'm going to put huge tariffs on your country on everything unless you put 10,000 troops on the border, Mexican troops, to stop people from coming, it had a huge impact. And that's happening again because they're working on the other side. But this is a forever problem in Mexico, and it's a narco state in many parts of their country. You know, the general population of Mexico, there's wonderful, wonderful people. But the criminals are in charge much of the country and much of the politics. You know, Mexico could have just closed their southern border off, which is very small. They could have sealed that so no one could have come through. So there was a lot of money trading hands. There's, you know, the drug cartels became the people cartels. They often made more money smuggling people than they did drugs or any other contraband. And remember this, they might say to a family, you know, you need $5,000 or $10,000 or $30,000 to cross the border. And then when they got here, they would say, oh, by the way, if you don't send us 20% of your paycheck every week, we will kill your family back home. So the Biden administration, basically we have a slave class in America now of new slaves. And they're actually working in America for the cartels because so part of their money is going back. We need to do a really thorough job of stopping any money wire transfers to banks and other places. And it's hard because some people here, you know, who came are actually working and trying to do the right thing and send the money back. So it's a little difficult, but we have enough systems that we should be able to start spotting money that's going to certain post office boxes, certain people. But what the Biden administration did, not only to America, but to people from around the world who wanted to become America, it's just disgraceful. You know, there were so many women. It was part of, you know, I've been lieutenant governor now for 10 years and senator for 7 years before that. I've been down to the border many times. You know, I know a lot about it. And part of passage for women was very often rape. It doesn't matter if they were 12 or 72. And the Biden administration just, you know, smiled about it, laughed about it. Mayorkas, all of them. It was just evil what they were doing, quite frankly. Evil what they allowed to happen. And when you're a part of it and you're allowing it to happen, then you're guilty of what's happening.
Well, I've got one last question, and this one's not related to the border. I saw that you've got an idea about how to help your state's cattlemen. There's something that's already known as a New York strip, and there's a Kansas City strip. So why not a Texas strip steak? I'm getting hungry thinking about it. Tell us how you came up with the idea.
Well, I was meeting with the cattle feeders and the cattle raisers a few weeks ago, and I went around the table. I said, by the way, what's your favorite cut of beef? You know, and a few of them said New York strip. I said, why are you calling it New York strip? It should be Texas strip. I said, I think we'll pass what we call a concurrent resolution, and we'll make it officially the Texas strip, because most of the steak that people eat around the country comes from Texas in the United States. We normally have about 6 million head of cattle. We have a few beef cattle. We have a few less now because of the drought, but we are the provider. Maybe Kansas was once upon a time in the past, but we're the ones, when you have a great steak, likely it came from here. So when this session is over in June, Alan, I'm going to get on a cruise ship out of Galveston, Texas. I'm going to sail across the Gulf of America and have myself a Texas trip.
I like the way you think. Well, Lieutenant Governor, we thank you for your service, not just to the state of Texas, but to our nation. God bless you, sir.
And God bless you, Alan.
When we come back, there'll be a word about why our hope was never lost. We'll be right back. During the prior administration, millions of people from all over the world approached our border with the aim of getting into our nation illegally. They weren't coming to our nation because we're hateful, bigoted, or mean-spirited tyrants. They were pouring into our nation because they perceived there to be opportunities here that are not present and available to them anyplace else in the world. Well, the legacy media in the previous administration like to portray open borders as an expression of compassion. However, there are real consequences to an open border. Because of the flood of illegal immigrants, billions of dollars were taken from U.S. citizens while overwhelming our educational system, our healthcare systems, our housing. Some American cities are still doing everything in their power to protect illegal immigrants with even greater enthusiasm than their concern for the education of the children who are citizens in those same cities. It's disorienting. Now, I'm not trying to point hatred at the people that are invading our country, but I am trying to tell you that we need to wake up and understand the grand manipulation by the media, the politicians, and many in the shadows who seek to divide us. The truth is, an open border is dangerous to all citizens. I'm grateful for the clear-eyed approach taken by our new administration and state officials like the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in Texas against all the illegal immigration. But how did we arrive at this place? I would submit to you it's because the church has not had the courage to talk about biblical perspectives. The church has failed to teach about the sovereignty of God. We've got no imagination of boundaries or borders. As Christians, let's go back to the fundamentals of the Word of God. Pay attention to the thou shalt nots because they're protective boundaries that keep us from negative outcomes. As believers, we need the foundation of God's Word to help us sort through the confusing clutter of today's culture. Life is full of choices, and some of our choices come with significant consequences, both for ourselves and others. But choosing the way of faithfulness will bring clarity to every choice we make. If we'll do that, I promise there's more reasons for hope than there are for despair. We'll be back in just a moment with your emails. Thank you for taking the time to send your emails. Your thoughts and opinions, they matter. Corinne from Colorado emailed, I'm very grateful for the messages delivered in each episode. The fact that faith is connected to what is happening in our world today is enlightening and encouraging. I thank God for the fact that this congregation and this minister have the courage to speak the truth. Well, thanks, Corinne. I'm afraid of the boss. I think we better tell the truth. The Webbs from Southeast Pennsylvania said, Pastor, another good informative interview program by you and our dear friend Chuck Nash. Chuck texted us right after he finished taping last week, and now you know first thing entering a room is check where all the exits are located. Watch your program nightly and pray daily for y'all. Psalm 91 protection and James 1:5 wisdom over your entire team. Thank you, Webbs. Your prayers have made a difference. And Chuck Nash is a true patriot and a gift to all of us. SS commented on a YouTube episode with Scott Brown, I'm so glad that RFK Jr. is over the health, not just our foods, but also the chemicals where they are spraying bad stuff over our lands and the meds that don't heal but cause another problem. Too many people, old and young, are sick and in bad health. Lord, help us. I agree, there's some changes coming to our health care that I believe will be better for all of us. We need to pray for Mr. Kennedy. There's a horrible onslaught against him, and they're making it personal. That's difficult. And finally, Fern Johnson emailed, Pastor Jackson, I've watched your daily program for a number of years, and also WOC Live. I'm enjoying your new afternoon program. I especially like Steve Moore, Alveda King, Gordon Chang, just to mention a few. There are more reasons for hope than despair is true. Thank you for all the ministries that bring blessings to us all. Hey, God's the one who brings the hope. If we'll keep saying yes to Him, I believe hope will become contagious in a whole new way. Thanks for your thoughts. Make sure to send your emails to comments@alanjacksonnow.com. And from all of us here in Nashville, thank you for joining us tonight, and you have a wonderful evening.